working in this business is like working in a live history museum, essentially. Every archive that we work on has nuggets of gold within it, be it a television broadcast archive or a government collection like National Archives of Australia, and there are things in there yet to be discovered.
It is an extremely busy time to be an archivist who works with tape.
We're running 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. When it's all singing, we can punch through about 100,000 hours of content a year or more. It has to be a factory approach, an industrial approach.
For some years now, archivists have known of a coming deadline in 2025, when a terrifying number of tape formats will become irretrievable because the last of the machines that can play them will break.
It's not a trumped-up threat, it is a real risk. It's the equivalent of basically having a fire at a library or a gallery.
For the National Archives of Australia, perhaps more than any other institution, the looming deadline poses an almost existential threat.
It can't all be saved, unfortunately. We're too late for that. The question now for many of these agencies is, what are we prepared to lose?
2 years ago, 7:30 reported on the looming disaster in the National Archives' magnetic tape collection.
We have around 220,000 hours of content on magnetic tape, and about 130,000 hours of that still require to be rescued.
2 years later, little progress has been made.
We have about 115,000 hours of material which has not been digitised, has not been preserved off that tape. It's unlikely we'll be able to preserve it all, so we're going to lose some of it.
A government-ordered review of the archives, released publicly in March, reveals the true scale of the crisis. It found that on current staffing levels and processing rates, staff could expect to digitise about 6% of the remaining audiovisual magnetic tape collection by 2025. Therefore, there is a likely loss of 94% of the collection, it said.
Time marches on and all sources degrade over time.
So you do admit that there is a risk of permanent loss.
The degradation of records over time is part of the ageing process.
The review delved deep into the archives collection to identify the items most at risk of being destroyed. Beyond fragile paper files and magnetic tapes, some of the most critical need is in the photographic collection, where more than 11 million images are at risk from vinegar syndrome and dye fade. Digitising them all would cost $224 million, some 37 times the archive's annual budget. Too much to save. Instead, the review recommended a high-priority digitisation program be run over 7 years for the most precious at-risk records, for a total cost of $68 million. Today, the minister responsible for the archives, Amanda Stoker, revealed the government would adopt that recommendation.
$67.7 million to the archives to help it get on track.
The government will spend the $68 million recommended by the review in almost half the time, concentrating it over 4 years.
Because we know that the critical milestone for these records is at the end of 2025. We can't keep everything, so what matters is that we are keeping what is really important to our national story, and that the process of determining what should be in that category is really well informed.
The review said even this $68 million spend won't save everything at risk, but it will help the archives avoid breaching its own legislation by allowing precious records to perish. Importantly, the extra money will be earmarked just for digitisation, on top of the money Archives gets for its regular work.
I've been using archives for about 40 years. In fact, I think I can claim to have used more archives than any colleague that I know. The standard of what you can expect from the archives is declining. So clearance times are extending, hours of admission are declining.
Respected war historian Peter Stanley has been alarmed at the state of the archives, particularly when compared with the War Memorial, which is about to undergo a $500 million revamp.
The story of Australians at war isn't told by the weapons that they used, it's told by the records that they created. So if you go to the memorial to do military historical research, the records I'm looking at are in the memorial, but they belong to National Archives. The poor man at the gate is putting the records in the rich man's castle.
150 knots have worn away the outer pine planking of the hut
Going back, 15 or 20 years, Australia was a leader in the science of media preservation. We've fallen from one of the good guys to one of the also-rans.
The injection of money announced today will go a long way to starting to claw back that reputation.
Australian collecting institutions have done a great job in the digitisation space. There's a little bit of room for improvement in our archives so that it too is able to punch really well internationally.
But the digital challenges ahead might make the analogue ones look easy. Already, departments are waiting to transfer 6.4 petabytes of data to the archives, triple the size of the existing collection. The review says the archives and its powers to classify information will need to be completely redesigned.
Hi, I'm Lee Sales. Thanks for watching this story. If you'd like to watch more of 730's stories, they are on the left of your screen. And tap on the button below to subscribe and get the latest from ABC News.